Hey guys, this is Charlie Barrett, and today I'm going to be talking to you about public disclosure of private facts. I'm not working with the best of cameras here, so I'm not going to be in the shot a whole lot. I'm going to make sure that you can see my slideshow and some of my images. And with that, let's get started. Alright, so public disclosure of private facts. The first thing you must prove to have a case was the info private before it was brought into the public. And good visual I found here, a meme from South Park. It states, if you don't want people to know your personal information, you shouldn't have posted it online. Yes, so if you have something out on Facebook and it's public information, then it is not private. So you would lose your case right there if you were trying to win in court. So let's go to the rest of it. It is illegal to publicize private info if it's highly offensive to a reasonable person. So a reasonable person, that's the key here. So this right here is Peggy Jo Fry. She brought a case to court. There was a report of her husband and another woman that died in a fire. And she didn't like all the details that were brought out. The reporter stated that her husband had been seen with that woman that also passed away in the fire in a tavern earlier that night, and other details came out about the children. The court deemed that it was not highly offensive to a reasonable person, saying that she was being sensitive, essentially. So she did not win the case. In most cases, the plaintiff is unsuccessful when bringing these to court. And if they allege emotional harm, the person who is alleging it must be alive. The right to privacy ends with death, according to the law. All right. So now let's move on to is not of a legitimate public concern or newsworthy. So the judges in general set a pretty low bar. It's less about what people necessarily need to see but want to see. It's not a super strict standard there. It's hard to win a case in court with that as well. All right, let's move on to the next slide. All right, how courts decide rulings. So to determine this, a court may consider the social value of a private fact. So judges will usually err on the side of public opinion in a ruling. So, because that's obviously that rule is obviously up for interpretation and it has a lot of elasticity to it. So, depending on where you are, it could be ruled a certain way, depending on what the case is. So, they also consider how much it invaded in private affairs, but most judges will leave that up to the journalists. So before it even goes to court, the judge is already in favor of the journalist and the editor that published this information to begin with, because they believe that it is their right to make the determination whether or not something is too private to share. And they will let out embarrassing information if they deem that it is worthy for the public to know. All right, so now let's move on to a person who has public notoriety and a person who had public notoriety. So somebody who still is very much in the public eye, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And Barack Obama, I wanted to use him because he's a former president. He still does make appearances quite a bit. He spoke recently at the Democratic National Convention, but he's somebody who was in a spot of public notoriety. But those are two examples right there. And So these, for a case, to win a case for somebody with public notoriety who used to have it but no longer has it and doesn't wish to have it, some people, sometimes the news will post something about this day in history, and then there's an example with from the book. It says this day in 1990, Mary Beth Elroy was convicted of killing her 2-week-old baby and sentenced to 15 years in prison. So that was a flashback on the news. They brought it up. Mary Beth Elroy sued, but she did not win the case. The courts still believe that is well within the rights to report on that. And now here's where it gets a little bit iffy. If the news has a story out about something that happened, somebody who was in the public eye formerly, like this day in history, for example, and add something to it at the end about what they're currently doing, like now they're selling real estate. If it doesn't have anything to do with the case before, then they've got a case in court. All right, now let's get on to the quiz. All right. What was the reason Peggy Jo Fry did not receive a favorable court ruling? Now, if you remember, it's because she